Have you got a minute to learn about other labels used for dyslexics? The first and most common label is learning or reading disability. The National Institute of Neurological Disorders defines reading disability, or dyslexia, as a brain-based type of learning disability that specifically impairs a person's ability to read. These individuals typically read at levels significantly lower than expected, despite having normal intelligence. The next label is specific learning disability, or SLD. The Australian Psychological Society says that a specific learning disability can affect how individuals learn in a variety of ways, including how they take in, remember, understand, or express information. The most common forms of learning disability are in reading and spelling, but they may also be found in other areas of functioning, including spoken language and mathematics. Individuals can present with a specific difficulty in one or more areas and have average or above average performance in other areas. Another label is auditory processing disorder, or APD. It's also known as central auditory processing disorder, or CAPD. Kids with APD often don't recognise subtle differences between sounds in words, even when the sounds are loud and clear enough to be heard. Another label, visual processing disorder. Visual processing disorder refers to a reduced ability to make sense of and process the information taken in through the eyes. A person with visual processing problems might have perfect vision, and some of the characteristics children can't find what they're looking for, or their writing might be untidy, or they have difficulty staying on the line or spacing out their work when they write. They might also be easily distracted when there's too much on the walls in the classroom or lots of movement. Another label is poor short-term memory. Short-term memory is a temporary store for information. The information in this store will later either be forgotten or, if it's important, used in our working memory and then transferred to our long-term memory. Poor short-term memory, especially in the visual and auditory mode, is often associated with dyslexia. Poor working memory, you might have heard that one. Now, working memory is the ability to actively hold information in our mind needed to do complex tasks like reasoning, comprehension, and learning. You might have heard language disorder. The Victorian Government Better Health website reports that it's estimated between 3 and 5% of children have a receptive or expressive language disorder, or a mixture of both. Other names for receptive language disorder includes comprehension deficit, and symptoms might include not seeming to listen when they're spoken to, a lack of interest when storybooks are read to them, an inability to understand complicated sentences, or difficulty following verbal instructions. They might parrot words or phrases and have language skills below their expected level for their age. Another label is poor linear sequential organisation. Children with poor linear sequential organisation have difficulty learning rules and understanding consequences. They might struggle with instructions and remembering what they've read, and you need to be able to understand the concept of sequence to read, because one letter follows another. At home, they might be poor self-organisers. They might take a long time to do everyday things like get dressed or brush their teeth. Another label is visual spatial learner. Dr. Linda Silverman, who's the pioneer of the visual spatial learner concept, identifies two types of gifted visual spatial learner. The first is the children identified as gifted, who score extremely highly on an IQ test because of their great ability both with tasks using visual spatial processing and those requiring auditory sequential thinking processes. The second is children who are brighter than their IQ scores, who have a great ability in visual spatial processing but marked weaknesses in auditory sequential processing. This second group of children are often not identified as gifted, and they struggle at school because their intelligence is not recognised and neither is their unique learning style. Another label is developmental dyslexia. Children with developmental dyslexia have difficulty separating relevant auditory information from competing noise. Another label, Alexia, which is sometimes called acquired dyslexia. Dysphonesia is another label, and the person labelled dysphonetic has difficulty connecting sounds to symbols, and they might have a hard time sounding out words, and spelling mistakes would show a very poor grasp of phonics. Dysesthesia, someone who generally has a good grasp of phonic concepts but great difficulty with whole word recognition and spelling. These kids have trouble with the sight words, and unfortunately the phonics-based programs won't help this dyslexic child at all. It will only increase the confusion because the child is being drilled on something they already know without being given a means to develop whole word recognition skills. This symptom of dyslexia is also sometimes called surface dyslexia or visual dyslexia. If your child has had special ed at school or has a tutor to help with reading and they're still struggling, don't wait for another frustrating year, because there's help and hope. If you'd like to talk to me about the help I offer, please call me for a free, no obligation 15-minute consultation, or fill in the box on the side and I'll give you a call. Have a look at the next video to find out about different learning styles.